The term breakaway civilization was coined by leading UFO researcher and author Richard Dolan to describe an elite class of humans who would have access to this hidden economy in order to conduct experiments in pursuit of their so-called ascension.
Hello everybody, hope everything's well. Now the idea for breakaway civilization is nothing new. It was first coined by Francis Bacon in his book The New Atlantis that was written in the 1620s. He gives references to a technologically advanced civilization that existed even in his time. Okay. Now I want to read this quote by Manly P. Hall, which you already know what part of the club he was a part of. All right. Now there exists in the world today and has existed for thousands of years a body of enlightened humans united in what might be termed an order of the quest. It is composed of those whose intellectual and spiritual perceptions have revealed to them that civilization has a secret destiny. This secret destiny is them guiding us to that. All right. Now these beings are none other than the Anunnaki, the ancient scientists I've been talking about in the last couple of my videos. Ninursag, which her husband is Enki, which I did a previous video on him. Okay. One of their children is Nazi, as you can see right here. Now, I couldn't really find any more information on that, which you already know that to be on purpose. Most would understand now why in ancient Sumerian times they would use the swastika all the time, the swastika symbol, which is just the symbol of the sun. Okay. I want to play this small clip, History of the Royal Dragon Blood. I want you to listen what this guy has to say about what Ashkenazi, okay, you getting this now? What Ashkenazi means in Hebrew.
Which brings us to another name the Scythians were known as, the Askuzai. In Hebrew, the word Ashkenazi means Germans, particularly communities along the Rhine River in western Germany and in northern France dating to the Middle Ages.
Okay, so now you getting this now. How this experiment was done thousands of years ago to bring in this dynastic period. Why you think that most of these, what you would call white supremacy groups, even these fake Hebrew groups, they're always caught up in what? Preservation. What was Hitler's biggest goal was? To make a super race. Okay? Now I want to play this small segment here on the breakaway civilization so you understand that these are not aliens. Most are thinking, oh, this is aliens from outer space. No. Remember, these are advanced, enlightened humans, which some would call the Naga, and the Naga is only beings who mastered the Kundalini energy. Okay? This is almost a genetic war, if you will, to keep people from activating at birth. You can go back to my video, The Ancient Ones, which we talk about that. Okay?
Researchers have suggested that the flying saucer is which initially was rocket powered. They had a set of circularly placed rockets underneath these airframes in the early prototypes. But the suggestion is that the end result of this research trajectory was to fuse the Bell as a power source with this saucer airframe and create, the flying saucer.
Something related to zero-point energy rather than rockets.
Exactly. And Corso, in The Day After Roswell, describes the technology. Colonel Philip Corso, who was the head of the Foreign Technology Division of the Pentagon, responsible for reverse engineering technology seized from foreign powers. He describes the wreckage recovered from Roswell, the kind of technology that was retrieved and reverse engineered and farmed out to various U.S. industries. And people familiar with the German advanced research, like Joseph Farrell, who've looked at Corso's descriptions of this technology, have pointed out that none of this stuff seems particularly alien. You have things like Kevlar. I mean, this is what Corso describes. Kevlar, night vision, lasers, metal that's perforated so that you can blow through the metal and feel your breath on your hand on the other side of the metal. And all of these kinds of technologies were science fictional in America and everywhere else in the world in the 1940s, but they were the edge of German research in 1944-45. Night vision was being fielded experimentally by the German military in 1944. So was Kevlar. And a lot of these, Velcro also was apparently discovered in the wreckage in Roswell. These are not the kind of technologies you expect from some alien civilization thousands of years ahead of us, but they are technologies consistent with the state of the art in Nazi Germany. And so it is possible that the reason that Roswell was, that, there are multiple layers to the cover story of Roswell. Of course, the weather balloon story, the Project Mogul story, but it's possible that the alien crash story is also a cover story. It's a little strange that they would even have announced that they captured a flying saucer in the first place before then covering it up, right? And one possible explanation for this is that in 1945, in 1947, a few years after the war's end in 45, it would be devastating to admit to the American people that some incredibly competent group of scientists and engineers had escaped the collapse of Nazi Germany and were operating from out of Argentina or who knows where else with a capability of launching these advanced aircraft into the sovereign airspace of the United States. And it's worthy of note that Roswell, at that time, Roswell Army Air Base, was the only facility on the planet housing nuclear weapons. So this was an incredibly sensitive American military facility that may have been being surveilled by this, extraterritorial survival of the Reich, this incipient breakaway civilization.
Okay. Hope you got the gist of what he was saying. I'll put this video in the link. I'll put the link in the description, of course, so you can watch the whole video. He will make reference to the New Atlantis in another book called The Invisible College, how they come together to discuss these and do experiments on these new technologies and sciences and so on and so forth. Now, most people who've done the study already know, okay, yeah, we know they're doing these experiments in remote areas, underground bases. That's pretty much when you start getting into this. That's 101. Okay? Now, I want to play this clip right here above Majestic. Thank you to Duncan Geeds, who posted this video, or the documentary. Now, remember what I said before. They are going to give reference to the serpent-like beings about the Naga. I already talked about that. David Wilco. David Wilco was one of the people who said that black people are the only people on this planet who don't seem to be seeded by extraterrestrials. We already got him saying that. Okay? So we now understand, which I'm going to talk about the aliens later, that they don't exist because they're all humanoid, and these are biological experiments used to collect data. Okay? Now, they're also going to show in this movie the blue beings and the green beings that I've been talking about, which people think are aliens, which they're not. We're talking about advanced ancient humans who operate on a higher sense than most of the public. That's why it's easy to manipulate. Okay, they do not age. All right, they already have technologies that define the aging. Okay, which this video will also make reference to that as well. All right, and we already talked about shape shifting and things of that nature. All right, so they have these abilities that might seem godlike to somebody, but we're talking about beings who operate closer to the multi-dimensional being, which I talked about in previous videos, which we are heading to right now, which your soul is the technology, which I will talk about in a different video. Now, in this clip here, they're going to make reference to the Antarctic Treaty, all right, how all nations agreed not to colonize the Antarctic, all right, because that's where the breakaway civilization is, and that's where they pretty much all go to meet. That is most likely the main base for, again, this breakaway civilization. Okay? Which is being ran by, again, we already mentioned, the Ashkenazi fake Hebrews. And we already know who's running Freemasonry. All right? Let me play this small clip for you.
German origin.
One of the ways that the Nazis obtained their advanced technology before World War II was through the use of a channeler called Maria Orsic. Maria Orsic was channeling telepathic messages from extraterrestrials that were offering her plans and schematics to actually create anti-gravity craft. Maria Orsic channeled this information for the occult Vril Society in Germany. This information was later used by these German secret societies to build out many of their crafts. Because they were focused more on the qualitative superiority rather than the quantitative, they were more focused on having more advanced technology rather than more tanks and boots on the ground. They were losing the ground war in Europe, but they were obtaining the more advanced technology. And to save that technology, they took it down to Antarctica pre and during World War II.
In the late 1930s, the Nazis...
Now, I just want to point something out here. Those wars were to destroy certain genetic markers, okay? That's why you had those wars and, that started. And it was to distract the people from understanding that these technologies were here since for the last 500, 600 years, okay? Maybe even more than that. We're talking about these technologies existed even the BC era, all right? You understand that there was never a time man was not. All right? When we talk about man, we're talking about the original man. You know who I'm talking about.
had an expeditionary group go down to Antarctica, and they found some very interesting things. They found a region under the ice that was created by geothermal heat from volcanoes. And there would be 3 miles of ice, and a few thousand feet above ground level would have been melted by the geothermal heat. And the rest of the ice acts as an insulator, causing it sort of like an igloo effect. And the dome would grow from the heat, the geothermal heat, and it would melt and run under the ice. And that was some of what was lubricating the ice and causing it to move. But underneath these areas, they were finding perfect areas to build submarine bases. So not only did the Nazis build out submarine bases, as they developed more and more of their space program, they developed out a massive spaceport. After these spaceports were developed, and the Nazis had handed it over to basically the Americans began to develop more and more research and development bases in Antarctica. In the late 1950s, a treaty was signed that stated that Antarctica was only to be used for peaceful research. Well, we were basically arriving and digging giant holes under the ice in various areas and building out these giant complexes, much like I think it was called Project Iceland back in the 1960s, where like in Greenland, the United States Army Corps of Engineers was building out an ICBM base hidden under the ice, and it was very sophisticated. I'm told that they were very similar in when they were built and how they were built to the buildings that were built in this program. Companies that were given access to these R&D bases began to develop NBC testing, they called it, nuclear, biological, chemical testing, which in the programs usually translates into them working with clones, working with different chemical compounds to affect how people develop psychologically or physiologically.
Okay, so there you have it. These bases still exist to this day, but they want to make you think that it's beings or aliens from some different part of the solar system, what have you, coming here and messing with, human genetics. But again, you can go back to my previous video, the ancient ones, when we talk about that there was a fusion of the genetics that caused a genetic defect. Again, that's why you're not born with these abilities open. In ancient times, that wasn't the case. All right? There was a literal invasion. All right? Again, David Wilco is in the show, in this documentary. He in my previous video, he says black people are the only ones on here who haven't been seeded by extraterrestrials. We're the only ones who haven't been manipulated. Okay? You can go back. This is what my video was about. I've been talking about this for a while now. Why you think that Hitler was obsessed with making the superhuman? That was his orders. They never lost this power, this power people think they lost. Okay, because it's not Nazis per se. Nazi just means German. We already just showed that, Ashkenazi. That means the Germans. We're talking about a race of people who are being guided by these black scientists. Remember what Brother Panic said, that there are blacks leading or guiding these whites. You can go back to his videos, and he talks about the same thing. Okay? Now, I want to show you this ex-CIA operative. We already know who runs the CIA. I already did a video on that, so you can go back and watch that. And like the title suggests, these aliens are just different models. Different humanoids, if you will, that have been genetically modified. Okay?
Alien, in my opinion, is they're not races of aliens out there. When we're talking about these 6 or 7 types of alien beings that are reported most often by the UFO community or people in general who see these entities. And by that I mean the particular entities we're looking at, first of all, generally is that little gray guy, and he stands about 3.5 feet tall. He's got an IQ of about 80. He's got a boss that looks just like him but stands taller than he is, about 5 foot tall. That guy's got an IQ of about 150. He's real intelligent. There's a mantis-like creature that stands 6.5 to 7 foot tall. He's got an IQ about 180. There's a humanoid that looks what some people refer to as the Nordic. This guy is about 6'2", 6'4", and he's very intelligent. And then there's another creature that some people fail to put in the UFO field, but he's been seen in these events, and that is this thing called Bigfoot. And he stands about 7.5 to 8 foot tall or even taller. All these, in my opinion, are models. They are not, in fact, races of aliens.
No kidding.
The DNA comes from here, this planet.
Now, this is extraordinary. Just amplify that just a little bit. You say models.
What I mean by models is what you're looking at is something, for instance, if you go down to the Chevy store and decide you're going to buy a car, and you look at all these different cars, you say, well, wait a minute, what all kinds you got out there? And they pull out 6, 7 different kinds of cars. those are 7 distinct different types of cars, but they're all made by the same guy, so to speak, the same company. Those are models. They're not races of anything. They're models made for the purpose of interaction with mankind, and the purposes are very, very hidden. They don't want anybody to know that. Obviously, they don't. There's a lot they don't want us to know, but they're very secretive. They're very deceptive, to say the very least. They lie, and they lie consistently. And they are in fact models. They are entities designed for the purpose of interaction with mankind.
Okay, so you heard it here live, folks. All right. They collect data for this god of the demiurge, or these beings, like I said, these scientists, to see how the experiment is going. That's it. I talked about this in a previous video as well. They make these beings in these underground bases. All right. The more genetically inclined Nazis, as you will, are in contact directly with these beings. We already done showed that in the movie Above Majestic. Now, I wanted to point something else out in the movie, the documentary Above Majestic as well. There's a lady in there who's going to say that we need to make the Matrix the way we need it. You see what I'm saying? So they're still trying to keep people down, and they also make reference to the secret societies. Okay, you know, we already know Prescott Bush helped Hitler. He was giving them tanks and everything. So there's so much to show that they're in cahoots with each other, but they're infighting between each other to decide who's going to rule the Matrix again. We're trying to get out of the Matrix. When I say we, I'm talking about the original man and woman. We're done. Okay? We're trying to become multi-dimensional once more so that we have our whole free will back. That is the ancient ones. Okay? But they're doing everything in their power to make you think, oh, this is aliens, and everybody's one to a degree. Okay? Now, I want you to read this comment right here. He's been commenting on my videos for a while. I know I'm putting him on the spotlight again, but he makes a lot of good points and references, and he makes a lot of good quotes. Okay? Clearly, these Neanderthals and offspring don't exist nowhere besides the physical reality. Do you understand now? That's why you will have some people who are psychopaths, which meaning they don't have a soul. Because they can't have that, they don't have that emotional connection. Okay? And what I've been saying before in these videos, all right, that's why you got everybody who's non-African has Neanderthal DNA who's only existed 50,000 years ago. Okay? And the original man's history, original man and woman, original man and original woman's history is suppressed. Now you can see why these scientists known as the Anunnaki weren't trying to make beings to go to mines, to mine gold or what have you. That wasn't it. This was a genetic war. All right, I get more into that, and again, I already mentioned that in the beginning of this video with the ancient ones, so you can go watch that. Okay? I couldn't find the comment, but it was another one who said that Caucasians were made to keep the other original races down. He ended up deleting his comment. But again, I have to point out why you think they're so obsessed with preservation and, you know, keeping that genetic line pure and things of that nature. You understand? And one last thing I want to point out. When these Caucasians get abducted, they talked about how these graves were showing them offspring and saying that that offspring was theirs. How you think they're getting this, genetic signatures? All right, talked about this before. These experiments been going on for thousands, if not millions, of years. Okay. But thank you for listening, and peace and balance to the ancient ones.